I don't want to relate too much of my childhood because it wasn't pleasant. And both of my parents were residential school survivors.
But we can agree on one thing. We have a very, very consequential guest, a special guest with us today. And I'm really proud, Guillermo, to introduce to our viewers Chief Keith Matthew. Let me tell you a bit about Chief Matthew and for our viewers too. You know, last year when the world found out about the 218 graves in Kamloops, BC, I never thought that I'd be sitting here with the chief of the Simpcw First Nations, which is in Kamloops, BC. And you know, when you think about how emotional that is and what it all means, and you could think that, you know, you look at Chief Matthew, he's a very well-placed Indigenous leader in Canada. He sits on all the right boards, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? He's not angry. He's not aggressive. He's not seeking to get revenge. His whole idea is, I want to put myself in a position to run something unique and that's going to make a difference. And so the Indigenous critical infrastructure, why we're here, Guillermo, is to get access to Chief Matthew to the highest levels of government here in Mexico, but to talk about what it is that the Indigenous critical infrastructure is doing. And Chief, we're just so grateful that you're here.
What I try to say is that the story of Chief Matthew is remarkable.
It's a remarkable story.
When I hear about that, I couldn't believe it.
Right.
But I think that it would be the best person to speak about that by himself. So, Chief Matthew, thank you very much for being here in Punto Medio. It's a pleasure and honor that you're here in Mexico, that you were agreed to join us in this delegation. And please, if you are so kind to share with our viewers about who you are, what are you doing, and why you are here, it would be fantastic.
Absolutely. And thank you both. I'm truly blessed. And it's such an honor to be here in Mexico and to work with such a fine group of people. That is the first thing I need to say. And you know, I found out as a leader, I don't know everything, and I don't pretend to know everything. I found that being a leader, a real leader, is bring people who know more than you and giving them the opportunity to truly show what they know. I can't be an expert on Mexican life or politics or, you know, this beautiful city that we're in right now, Mexico City, one of the greatest cities in the world. That's something that I can't do. I need to depend on people and trust people like yourself and others who have much more experience than me in those matters.
Chief, you shared with us before this interview or this occasion that the reason of the fund. Mm-hmm. You say that you like to put like a common ground. So if you're so kind to elaborate that and share that with our viewers, it would be fantastic.
Absolutely. You know, the point of my story before was I don't know everything, I don't pretend to know everything, but what my goal in life, my legacy is to raise the level of living for Indigenous people.
Right.
And I can't do that by myself. So when I depend on people around me, our advisors, they're brilliant people, man. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. All I got to do is show up and just, you know, deliver a speech, and these guys do all the work. It is so amazing. I'm blessed. I really am. Yeah, but more importantly, you know, the thing that I like doing, the thing that gets me up in the morning is changing that dynamic out there for our Indigenous people and actually helping them help themselves.
Sorry for interrupting you, but in order to have a perspective, because our viewers also are all over the Americas.
Yes.
So if you're so kind to share with us your experience as Indigenous person in Canada and why you would like to do things differently.
Absolutely.
That would
Absolutely.
And I think too, as you do that, Chief, it'd probably be a good idea just to focus a little bit on where you come from.
Yeah.
That's right.
We don't, people oftentimes think, well, I kind of know what it means to be Indigenous, but they don't really.
I agree.
And so if you could just take a couple of minutes and wax on, Chief.
Sure. I appreciate that. And, I grew up poor, but I grew up in a ranch with, I was the second youngest of 8 children.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to relate too much of my childhood because it wasn't pleasant. And both of my parents were residential school survivors. You know, that the 215 children that you mentioned, that's where both of my parents went to residential school in Kamloops. And it's an unfortunate history. The residential schools run by the Catholic Church in Kamloops, they were created with one thing in mind. Sir Duncan Campbell Scott, in the creation of the schools, said it's to remove the Indian from the child. And that was to remove every vestige of Indianness from my people. And they were incredibly successful. And I don't want to focus too much on that.
Right.
That's not the point of what we're trying to do here. And it'd be easy to be extremely bitter about that history and to hurt people, to lash out. But I've decided to use it, and the other people that we're working with understand this too. You know, it doesn't do any good to do that. You have to use that energy in a good way. And I think that, what we're doing today as Indigenous people is learning from that experience and saying never again. And we're saying never again by helping our people and other Indigenous people rise above that negativity and create a future for themselves. Because that's the number one job for leadership, to create hope.
Yep.
That's the number one thing.
So I like that, Chief, and it certainly puts a great perspective on why you're doing what you're doing. And we don't understand as people who've never been told or never faced the prospect of losing your identity. And so that I really think those are issues that I think as observers like we are, Guillermo, we should be digging more into this at some point. But I wanted to get to this point, Chief. You're now the chairman of a very interesting private equity fund, the Indigenous Critical Infrastructure Fund. You're here in Mexico because the people at the highest levels here think it's a really good story that maybe you could help to deploy capital, look at projects where the Indigenous Critical Infrastructure Fund would look to invest. What is the Indigenous Critical Infrastructure Fund?
But if you mentioned something that is that changed any kind of previous views about private equity funds. You mentioned a concept when you were delivering your speech at the Chamber of Deputies, economic reconciliation. If you are so kind to share with us about what is the fund, the goals, and what is the concept of economic reconciliation, I think our viewers will be highly impacted as we were in that chamber.
Thank you very much. I grew up poor. I grew up dirt poor. And I always, other Indigenous people, I think they think that money will solve their problems, and I don't think so. I really don't think so. There's a number of ways out of poverty for our people, and education is one. My dad was the chief of my community in late 1960s, and I remember we had Indian agents who look after every aspect of our lives. And I'm a status Indian, and I don't know if I can describe this to other Indigenous people, but I'm a ward of the federal government of Canada. That means I'm a child legally. And it's.
But what do you mean when you say a child in the eyes of the federal government?
They controlled every aspect of our lives, everything.
So are you able to own property?
No. Hernando de Soto, a noted Peruvian economist, called our situation where I have a mortgage on my reserve. I still live on my reserve because I'm a romantic. I believe in living and doing, working for the people. And it means living there. It
And
means,
just so that our viewers understand, a reserve is land that's been apportioned to your tribe?
yeah.
Do you
but
call
it's-
them tribes or nations? What do you?
You can call it whatever you want, but it's a big family. Is
Okay.
What it is.
But just tell me something, because something that I understand is a reserve.
a reserve.
But it happens that Canada is the second largest country in the world. The second largest country in the world.
Yeah.
And also it happens that originally that land used to be owned by us, the indigenous. Could you tell me about your comments about that, and also
Right.
to describe what does a reserve mean?
A reserve means that the land is reserved for the use and benefit of status Indians. And I have a status card, or a treaty card, as it's commonly known by the numbered treaties, in my wallet. And I'm not going to give you my number, but that you can draw your own parallels between those numbers and how numbers have been used in the past by other regimes. But what the Indian Act did is it made us into wards of the federal government. So I'm a child in the eyes of the federal government, even today. And the land that was set aside for the use and benefit of status and treaty Indians, 0.02% of Canada's land mass is held in reserve for the use and benefit of status Indians.
0.02%.
Yes.
But-
Yes. So what
Think about
that says is that I can't. Her Majesty owns the land.
So at the end of the day, it's supposed like this is like a fantastic language that has been used for the use and benefit.
Yes.
Is that right? It's like telling you that this is just for you.
We only have user.
Uh-huh.
We can only use it.
No, but I mean like after being the owner of the second largest country of the world, so you would have access and you would be able to use just that percentage that you say.
We're beggars in our own land. And as a result, we had second class opportunities for economic development, medical services. You go right across the board, and that's what we've been dealt. The hand that we've been dealt.
Exactly.
So,
But I want to
no,
bring
you hold it, because I
Whoa.
think that we have to go to the other segment. But this is
It is, but here's what I think.
Please go ahead.
I like what you're saying, and I think we do need to really dive into this, because we should do a whole show just on the need for more people in this country to understand how we can educate them on the awareness of Indigenous people.
Absolutely. Chief Matthew, if you're so kind to stay with us for the second part of this segment, if you are so kind to share with us about the specifics of the fund, would be highly appreciated.
Absolutely.
Amigos
Yes.
de Punto Medio, friends of Punto Medio, please stay with us. We are having a great conversation with Chief Matthew. Stay tuned.